Ben Nicholson-Smith, my guy and yours, MLB reporter for Sportsnet, host of At the Letters. Good morning, sir. How are we doing?
JD, how's it going? I can tell that you're already you're feeling some big feelings around these Jays trades, and that's good. I mean, this is an exciting time of year.
I'm fired up. People go, selling sucks. Not to me. I like it.
Selling's fun.
Selling is totally fine. Has no one ever hosted a garage sale? It's so good. It's the best time you can have. No, I will not bring that down to a quarter. All I'm asking for is a loony. I'm holding firm on the loony. Wow, you're coming back an hour later with that loony, huh? What do you know? Actually, that toaster's gone now, ma'am. No, selling is fun. Selling is fun. Buying is more fun. There's no question. Buying stuff, getting things more fun. But here's you get the money, you get the future, and that's what Toronto did.
I really like the image of a young JD Bunkis selling a toaster
fanny pack on.
Is a great
image. It was the San Francisco Giants fanny pack too. It was beautiful. It really was. That orange and black. Oh, that opening up that zipper to insert the money. Hell yes. Hell yes, brother. So how did the Jays get so much for Kikuchi? Because this looks like a haul for a couple of months of a guy who, is not even a guarantee to be there in their top three pitchers when it's come playoff time.
Yeah, it's a great trade. It really is. We don't know how it's going to, how it's going to be viewed 5 years from now. But on the day of the trade, they really made the most of an opportunity. Zero chance that Jake Bloss is better than Kikuchi this year. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. But Bloss is a good pitcher. Loperfido is one of the Astros' top prospects. He's a major league outfielder. His floor is being a fourth outfielder. To get Wagner, he's someone who's got more walks than strikeouts at AAA. Probably will play in the majors at some point. You can see if he can become, maybe a surprise guy, maybe like a Spencer Horwitz type who bursts onto the scene and does a little better than expected. But Bloss, clearly the headliner. This is a really, really good return for the Blue Jays. And partly it is a credit to their front office. Partly it is due to the circumstances. And no one could have necessarily planned it this way. But, at a time that Garrett Crochet is making extension demands, at a time that Tarek Skubal's off the market, at a time that a lot of teams don't have money, so Yusei Kikuchi's $10 million salary is really, really appealing, not only to the bigger market teams, but to the smaller or mid-market teams. The conditions were there for the Blue Jays to do really well, and to their credit, they were able to make the most of that and get what not only the Blue Jays say is a really good return, but what executives around the league with other teams are saying is a ridiculous return, a great haul. These are to me from other teams. So this is a really, really good trade for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I have only seen one place that is, I wouldn't even say down, but not ecstatic, and no publication. Like even you got Jeff Passan, who is a journalist editorializing tweets. That's how good they view the return for the Jays. By the way, the only publication is our enemy, ESPN, who ranked Christine Sinclair as not a top 10 women's player in the last decade, gave the Blue Jays a C+ for this trade return, to which I said, what did you want them to get back for Yusei Kikuchi?
I just wouldn't,
Yeah, I'm not. I just, listen, people get riled up, Benny, when we get slighted, okay? So I bring up the C+, and it's good for business. Everybody's mad. They're like, it works. It works. I'm good with that. So they get a great return. That makes a lot of sense. Now, if that's the return for Yusei Kikuchi, why not shop Chris Bassitt and say you'd eat some of the money in order to get a haul like this? Why not continue to sell guys like Chad Green today?
Yeah, really super, super fair question. I agree with it. That's probably a question that I will be asking, Blue Jays people in the next day or two if they don't move those guys. I think that, to me, so I'm not going to sit here and like say that they shouldn't trade those guys, because I really think that the conditions are there to explore trades. I agree with you. I don't, based on my reporting, I don't think that that the Blue Jays are likely to trade Chad Green. I don't think they're likely to trade Chris Bassitt or Kevin Gausman or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette. And we've talked about possibilities for trades involving all of those guys. I think that based on what I've been told, those guys all stay put. And the focus today is potentially dealing a Kevin Kiermaier or Trevor Richards, and, you know, is there another smaller deal to be had? We'll see. But I think Kiermaier and Richards are the two most likely Blue Jays to be traded today. And then, yeah, we can get into the whole discussion about whether they should trade Bassitt, because I do think there's a real case to be made for doing that, just considering his age, the market for starting pitching, and the overall trajectory of the Blue Jays franchise.
Yeah, okay, so I think that the case is pretty solid. Okay, so part of this you're saying is that Kikuchi's market broke for the Blue Jays. And I just don't understand how this front office wouldn't look at that and say, holy crap, we were able to inject 2 top 5 prospects into our farm system for a few months of Yusei Kikuchi. Like you mentioned, that Jake Bloss, it's not a 0% chance that he is as good as Kikuchi now, that he gives them those kinds of results now. You've got Chris Bassitt, who is an established major leaguer. You've got a reliever in Chad Green that, by all accounts, Yankees fans are foaming at the mouth for, that the organization wants back. And I think that it actually takes a little bloom off the rose of the Kikuchi trade if you're only going to go into this thing with half measures. Things broke your way. And you as an organization, and this is just me opining now, you and as an organization, I think, have a duty to take the biggest advantage that you have here, which is all of a sudden you're holding a lot of cards when it comes to the reliever and the starting pitching market. Like you said it, Tarek Skubal ends up coming off the board. Crochet, I saw Ken Rosenthal say yesterday that when he put that statement out there saying that he wasn't going to pitch in the playoffs without an extension or a start in the playoffs, I can't remember if it was he would do it out of the bullpen or whatever it was, but when he put that out there, teams walked away, teams ended up getting scared. All of a sudden you're looking at a starting pitching market with those two guys out of it and Fedde already off the board, and it's thin. Like, you have a guy. You have a real bona fide guy who, like you said, does not fit the actual timeline of you competing. To me, it's flat out nonsensical. Like, yeah, the explanation from the Blue Jays on not moving Chris Bassitt today, I don't think there is one that people are going to accept that have a brain.
Yeah, I think the explanation, as far as what I would expect the Blue Jays to say, is that they want to win in 2025. They want to keep that door open. They like Chris Bassitt. They believe that he can help them win next year. That would be, you know, a significant part of the reasoning. I now, listening to your argument there, I tend to agree with it that, you know, you look at a time that, let's see, you know, who still needs a starting pitcher. The Dodgers haven't added one. The Padres, the Brewers. Atlanta still needs one, right?
The Mets. Yeah.
The Guardians, the Orioles still do, and arguably the Yankees. So that's a lot of teams that still need starting pitching. And I don't think so. Let's be clear on this. Like, yeah, I don't think you're getting anyone as good as Bloss for Bassitt. I really don't. So maybe it's like, maybe you get someone slow Perfido in a throw-in, you know, and you're kicking in cash. I don't think you're getting as exciting a return. Maybe you're getting like a AA starter, you know, the equivalent of like a Chad Dallas from the Blue Jays, something like that for a Chris Bassitt. So I don't think you're getting a home run deal, because Kikuchi, aside from being cheaper, is also younger, so has better stuff. He's also left-handed. He's also, like, you know, the thing with Yusei too, if Yusei isn't starting for you, he can be a nasty reliever. But no one's going to look at Chris Bassitt and say, oh, yeah, I want him coming in the 8th inning. No one. He's a starting pitcher. Yep. And part of his value is the bulk innings. Now, I think that value is real. And again, I would listen on him. But we are talking about two very different profiles here. Yep. Yusei is someone, you know, the versatility, the stuff, the live arm, this all contributes to his value. Whereas Bassitt is a little more inflexible, a little older. The value just isn't there. So I do think we need to be realistic about what it is that we're talking about when it comes to Chris Bassitt and Chad Green, because even if they did trade them, the return would not be huge. That being said, I personally agree with you. I would be listening.
Yeah, I do. I think you got to listen. And here's what I truly, madly, deeply believe is you have to be flexible as a front office, and you need to be opportunistic, right? Like, if you're the Toronto Raptors and it's 2019, you're not going into the offseason thinking we're getting Kawhi Leonard. Like, that is our goal of the offseason. But could you imagine had they said, this is our plan. This is what we're doing. We are going in and we are running it back with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry and a new coach. And this is the way that we want to do it because this is our plan. And then the Kawhi trade ends up popping up and you go, sorry, we're already set in our ways. We've already got our plan. The thing with me with the Blue Jays, and I'm sure some of it is posturing, this whole idea of like compete in 2025, but when things break your way, when things change, when starting pitchers come off the market and there are that many teams that are hungry, and you look at things and say, okay, this guy's owed $22 million next year and still a bunch of money this season. Is there a way that we can repurpose this to be more competitive? Is there a way that we can take this and put it towards, God, I'm just daydreaming here, but go put it towards Juan Soto next year. Say you're taking the $22 million out of this year for Chris Bassitt, put it to $22 million worth of Juan Soto next year. Like, these are things that you have to be able to talk about. Oh, wait. So now if we add a couple more prospects, it feels a little bit better if we are going to trade from that surplus going into this offseason, if we do want to be competitive for 2025. Like, the pieces that we take today might be more valuable in the offseason, and we can acquire a year of someone like a Bassitt. The thing that would bother me most is if they take this hardline position and if they're quote-unquote listening on players only and not shopping. That to me is malpractice. You have to at least be shopping. You have to be the ones that are making phone calls and saying, what would you pay for these guys? Because if all you're doing is sitting and waiting after putting out a beacon that you don't want to move them for, weeks, and then you end up missing the boat, that to me is where it's like, no, you've failed as a front office. You've actually neglected your duty.
Yeah, and I think that there's a difference between kind of different tiers on this Blue Jays team when we're talking about that too, because let's say with Vlad Jr., right? And he homered kind of quietly in all this. He has a monster day yesterday as all these trades are being made, hits a couple bombs.
That one home run too, like
the opposite field one.
Just I was like, okay.
Outrageous.
Yeah, that's back in play? Okay.
Yeah, he's just, and it's funny too, because you're watching the rest of the team and, all due respect to Stuart Baroa and Ernie Clement, my goodness, like Vlad Jr., he is going to get pitched around so much in the last couple months of the season. Because he's playing so well, and B, the rest of the lineup is just not on his level.
Yeah.
But anyways, so with Vladdy, for example, I totally get you're not gonna spend a ton of time trying to come up with hypothetical offers for him. Let other teams come to you. Yeah, I really agree. With that. Same with Bo Bichette. He's injured. You don't try to shop a guy when he's injured. If someone wants to come to you, fine. Don't spend your days trying to come up with trade proposals for a guy who's injured. Don't do it. Now, where I would say for the Blue Jays, they should be a little more proactive is Chad Green and Chris Bassitt. Correct. And IKF, actually. I would say IKF
sorry,
too,
I forget about him because he's been non-existent. But yes, correct. I agree with him too.
And he's rehabbed, getting very close to coming back. And I would just, especially when you look at the way Leo Jimenez has played, Leo Jimenez looks like a big leaguer to me. He looks like he has taken steps forward. And so you have some guys emerging there, so there's actually depth behind it. Whereas with Chad Green, there's no one in that. This bullpen, we've talked about it all season. They are so many arms away from having a serviceable MLB bullpen. Yeah, that's part of the reason they want to keep Chad Green. I think that you can critique that. You can go after that reason.
Oh, I will.
And again, and that's fair. That's totally fair. We don't know exactly many talks are happening behind the scenes. Again, like I'm not in, Ross Atkins' phone or his email. I don't know what exactly is happening, but my sense is that they are not being, super proactive as far as selling those guys, based on what I've been told. And I think with Green and with Bassitt, there is a case that they should be doing a little more to see what's out there.
Yeah. Here's what I would say too. To your point about, yes, we're not in their phones, and yes, hypothetically, could they be doing those things? Sure, but if those two players aren't traded, right, or let's say three, let's add IKF to it, even though I'm not sure he's going to carry as much value as those guys given the injury and the position player, and that, even though he was good for the Jays this year before the injury, I think most people looked at that contract and said, oh, okay, that's a little bit of an interesting one at least. If you put it out there, again, for months that you're not selling those guys, you're not listening to those guys, you're not shopping those guys, you don't want to move them because you want to compete in 2025, if you end up failing, I shouldn't say failing. If you end up not moving them, I think it's fair that people can make the assumption you didn't do a lot to try and move them, especially given the parameters of this market, which makes it easier to critique.
Yeah, it certainly is. I do think, too, knowing how thorough MLB front offices are and how
Yeah.
ruthless they are, like if there's a team out there, like think about Alex Anthopoulos, right? And how Atlanta just lost Ozzy Albies. Like if Alex Anthopoulos really wants IKF, he's not going to wait for the Blue Jays to shop IKF. He's not going to wait for, Joe Sheehan or Ross Atkins or, James Click to phone him up and say, hey, we actually have this guy called IKF. Alex Anthopoulos knows this. He could tell you probably off the top of his head what IKF's salary is, what his approximate max exit velo is, where he is exactly. Like this is how dialed in these GMs are. So they know, and it's not as though this isn't a possibility being considered. It's not like the Blue Jays have to go remind Alex Anthopoulos and tap him on the shoulder. So from that standpoint, the posturing is to some degree kind of semantics. And look, if there's a real offer, if Atlanta comes to the Blue Jays and says, hey, we'll give you our number 5 prospect for IKF, to me, you take that deal.
No brainer.
Yeah, you just got to do it. But, we'll see. There's still time before 6 p.m. as well, so things could change. But based on what I'm hearing, doesn't sound like IKF, Bassitt, Green are likely to move. They're not likely to move. The guys who are more likely to move are Trevor Richards and Kevin Kiermaier.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, Trevor Richards, Kevin Kiermaier. Like Trevor Richards has one pitch, and he's been getting tattooed for a while now.
Yes.
And yeah, Kevin Kiermaier, they already put him through waivers. Nobody wanted him, and he also just ran into a wall. You're
not getting much back.
Yeah, I know you're not even getting another team to eat all the money. And now, is it your understanding that the Jays now are definitively under the competitive balance tax? Because even Blake Murphy has to guess. Do you have any clarity on that?
So I've been so on my phone, texting people. I have no idea. I have no idea. Blake would have a good idea.
Yeah. I love how you punted that over to him. You're like, he's on top of that. We were like, look at the spreadsheets, nerd. You handle that. We'll handle the insider phone calls and the text messages. Yeah, I think they are. Do you have not to keep going down this when you already kind of just expressed a lack of interest in it, but do you actually feel as though that was a priority for them, or that this is going to have as meaningful of an impact as I've been kind of laying it out?
I think it's super interesting, and I think that it's something the organization clearly is aware of. I don't think it's a priority. I think that, their priority is getting back good prospects, which it should be. I think there's also a chance that, the CBT the tax bracket that you're in for the CBT only matters if you're going to be. And are the Blue Jays going over the CBT next year? We're going to hear from Mark Shapiro in a week's time on August the 7th, I want to say. He's scheduled to address the media for the first time.
Breaks his silence.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear. It'll be super interesting to hear topics, including, finally for the first time about Ross Atkins, right? To hear his assessment of Ross Atkins. But, the CBT would potentially be another topic that could come up there. And, we'll see. But I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that next year's Blue Jays team is above the CBT, in which case it doesn't matter what bracket you're in.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so now let's enter that portion of the program then. I want to go down some. They actually tell you when you do this job, hey, ignore social media, right? Don't start to absorb the social media critiques or the social media questions or conspiracies. But I'm doing it. I'm a voice of the people. I'm going to ask the questions that the people want. Do you believe that any part of this non-sell, right? Or let's call it a limited sell, because it's certainly not a non-sell when you get 3 top 7 prospects in your farm system. But part of the reason that the Blue Jays are not entertaining offers on the likes of the Bassitts and the Greens and anybody with term is that this front office is not allowed or limited in some ways, that they are curbing the power of the guys that are in control now, because there's potential for Ross Atkins specifically, I would say, or especially, actually is probably the better word, that they don't want him moving major pieces.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, with the social media stuff, it's so hard to not give into that at least a little bit. And so that's part of it. It's part of our world.
No, I think you want to answer questions that people, if there's enough people that want to know or have a theory, then you go, okay. What you don't listen to is when you make a Yariel Rodriguez tweet and people are like, he's our favorite player who ever lived. And I'm like, you're like, okay, mute conversation. That's that one.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then even on the idea of this being like a limited sell, I do think it's a pretty, like they've acquired 11 players back. They've traded away 5 players off their roster.
Yeah.
20% of their roster has already been flipped. Like, it's a pretty big sell, with potentially more to come. Could it be bigger? Yes, as we've discussed. But as for the impact of the front office and hey, is this scope to some degree because there's some sort of move coming with Ross Atkins?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. If anything, the last couple of weeks have given me reasons to believe, just based on how I'm hearing things internally with the Blue Jays and how things are being to organization too. Like, it seems like Ross Atkins is definitely running this show. The fact that he got this big return for Yusei Kikuchi, I don't know, it doesn't hurt his job security. And the fact that Mark Shapiro is having this press conference a week after the deadline, major organizational changes, that would be a very, very weird time. It would be hard to imagine that would be the case. So, I think Ross Atkins is presently in place as the GM. The Blue Jays are, like any responsible organization, they are going to assess their decision makers, including Ross Atkins. And so, I don't think he's above reproach, but I don't think that any final decision has been made as far as what the future is there.
So this would bother me, and it does, if that is the actual line of thinking. I know this is just you reporting and, you speculating, kind of reading the tea leaves, what's happening here, making educated guesses. But if someone gets increased job security because they do a decent job of recovering from a mistake, like you're still a seller. Like you didn't come into this year like, well, we hope to be decent and we'd like to be like, no. The time for that, Ross, is not. It's not now. There's no you get kudos for getting a great return for Yusei Kikuchi, one that, again, we said that the industry is very impressed by. But the fact of the matter is that your farm system was already in a place where these 3 guys that other organizations were willing to give up on for rentals immediately enter as your top 7. You are in a spot where you were expecting to be trying to win a World Series this year, and now you're selling, and you're one of the only teams in baseball that is completely out of it. So, no, when it comes to the kudos meter, I give them some. I go, good job. Good job on this trade. Happy that you made this trade. When it comes to changing job security because you made a good trade from a value standpoint, like, absolutely no.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I think, like, I really think that the Mark Shapiro is someone who zooms out almost more than, like, way more than most people. Like, I think that he would zoom out to like a 5-year window and be like, yeah, this is how we see things for 5 years. So when I say that, I mean, like, it's a nudge. We're not saying that this totally reframes things, but point taken 100%.
Yeah. And I would say this, though. My biggest fear with this front office when it comes to the not moving on stuff, and yeah, like, I get it. If Shapiro's safe, then I almost am. I'm less concerned about Atkins moving on, because it's like, yeah, okay, if it's still Shapiro, then who really cares? And I've made this example already, but it's what Leaf fans experienced with Kyle Dubas, where everybody went, yay, Kyle Dubas is gone. That was mad about where the Leafs are at. And then Brendan Shanahan stayed, and he called all the core 4 and was like, you're all staying. And people realized, oh, right, the president actually has a lot of say on the baseball operations side of things, regardless of this whole idea or notion that they almost try to put it forward as though they're there just for the financials. You're like, no. You're weighing in on the basketball team, the hockey team, the baseball team. But that one of their big, I would say, blind spots is I don't think that this front office understands the fan base at all. Like, their inability to connect with the fans has been a day one issue. I don't think they care.
Yeah.
I think they are horrifically robotic about it. They kind of come off as completely disingenuous whenever they try to connect with the fans. The only moments that I've ever felt like Shapiro gets it even one iota has been whenever he does the broadcast with Shulman and he starts talking about his passion for ballparks and baseball. And you go, okay, I get, how this guy is a great speaker. But in terms of understanding what Jays want and the needs of Jays fans, like, no. They continue to over and over and over again miss the mark. And so I do think that there is an accountability portion of this that fans want, which is, maybe things don't change because Shapiro's keeping the job, but there has to at least be an understanding on his part of, my guy was not good for years. We were making mistakes for years. We created a really painful to watch baseball team where the highlight of the season is a Yusei Kikuchi trade. Someone needs to be held accountable for that, and it can't be Ross Atkins being the general manager again next year. Like, even if it is and was you pulling the strings all along, you have to show the fan base that you're at least, accountable within your tight-knit circle, your tight-knit organization. Otherwise, I think that, you continue to kind of show them that you don't really give a crap what they think or how they feel.
And this has been, like you said, the
Day one
Yusei Kikuchi trade, this might be, I don't know, am I forgetting something big? Like, this might be the highlight of the season.
Oh, it's unquestionable. It's by far the happiest I saw Jay's Twitter yesterday. It was like,
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is wild because you're trading away a beloved player.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we don't want to overlook that. Yusei Kikuchi, talking to him yesterday after the trade, like, what a, he's such a considerate, consistent individual. Like, he's such a, every single time that I ever interacted with him or saw him interact with anyone, he is so unfailingly polite and courteous to people and a funny dude and a hard worker and a great pitcher and all this stuff. So we don't want to gloss that over in talking about this. But yes, trading him away was kind of low-key a great moment for the Blue Jays. Mm-hmm. And that underscores how painful this season has been. It has been a dismal, dismal season. The team is bad. The farm system is bad. That's not where you want to be as an organization, right? Mm-hmm. They wanted to compete. They're spending a lot of money on a last place team that doesn't have a good farm system. That is really, really not where you want to be. Now, we've spent months and months talking about that. So, I also today to be like, hey, yeah, but you know what? They actually took some really good steps forward, not only with the Kikuchi trade, by the way, but the Jimmy Garcia trade is a good one. You got something back for Justin Turner, who's 39 years old. Like that, great, right? Like you get the Pearson deal was the one I didn't really get, but getting Coffee back was a good trade. I think they've made good trades. This has been a really good week for the organization, but it's a good week in the context of a really, really rough season. And again, don't need to dwell on how bad the season has been. Mm-hmm. I do think this week has been a real step forward. Yeah, no, the only reason that I bring it up is because, I think that when you do have a successful week, we live in an era where everything is like there's no permanence to anything, right? It's just now. And you make one trade and people are like, oh, well, what does this say about job security? And I just want to remind everyone that there was a poll at the very beginning of the year. It was an anonymous poll, 40 executives across Major League Baseball. They asked who the best front offices were. And by the way, it was a ranking of top 5, right? So it wasn't just who do you think the best front office is, get a vote. But you got 10 points for first place, 7 points for second place, 5 points for third place, 3 for fourth, 1 for fifth. Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro received 0 votes. So 40 executives across all of baseball, not one of them even put the Blue Jays front office in the top 5. So, I think that their peers look at them as a failed front office. I think that the fan base looks at them as a failed front office. And I don't think that you, in a competitive year where you ended up selling but then getting good return, and granted, credit to you for the return, but that should change anything in terms of expectations, securities, whatever, what have you. Okay, let's keep it moving. I got one last major thing for you because I think we've touched on all the selling stuff, right? Is there anything I'm missing that you wanted to get off your chest on the selling stuff before I move to the Vladdy conversation? Just super quick. Yep. Undeniable that fans view them as a failed front office. I think that there's a lot of frustration. You hear the chants in the crowd. That's clear. As for the peers, I think the peers view the Rockies as a failed front office, the Marlins, or maybe the White Sox as a failed front office. I wouldn't say that's the case about the Jays. I don't think that the Blue Jays are the envy of baseball. They're not. I think they're kind of more viewed as middling, like not particularly awe-inspiring, not particularly bad. That's how I think they're viewed.
Yeah, nice. Not on
right. I'm not saying that that's like you. I'm just saying that's my sense.
Okay, and your sense is far, far, far better than mine. So yeah, we're taking that one for what that is. The Vladdy run that he's put together here has been incredible. He's all of a sudden, you look at even the totality of the work and you go, yeah, he's been pretty almost undeniably like one of the best 15 position players in all baseball in the whole of the season, which is a year that did start with a lot of Vladdy worm burners and the same conversation as to why the ball wasn't leaving the yard when he's barreling them. And it was just a lot of familiar stuff. And we went, oh my God, this is Vladdy. Okay, this is Vladdy. This is a future problem, or I shouldn't say problem, but a future conversation. But do you have any read on what this is actually doing for the contract negotiations? Like, I think you could make the case that this is making things easier, because if you're the Jays and you view him as the face of the franchise and you're watching this right now, you're going, hey, he's reinforcing what we believe, which is this guy's fun. He can tear the cover off the baseball. He wants to be a Blue Jay and he's good. So let's give him some money. Or you could be of the mind where you say, well, maybe this makes it harder because it creates yet a greater divide between the bad Vladdy, the good Vladdy, and where you land on the number.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier in a way, because I think where it's really hard to reach an agreement is like Bo Bichette. Like that, to me, there's no path to an extension for Bo Bichette. He won't be extended. He might be traded this offseason. We'll see. He won't be traded today, but might be traded this offseason. That's the tough one. It's just, where do you fit the value? With Vladdy, for all the ups and downs, like we talk about him as if he's like so inconsistent, and yet if you look at, I was on Baseball Reference, you look at his per 162 in the major leagues, 32 homers, 100 RBI, 850 OPS. Like that's what he's done if you give him 162 games. That's amazing. That's great. Like that's, it's elite production. And it's been even better than that this year, where you look at a 900 OPS in a season where offense is down. This guy is having an absolutely monster season. So, it's not going to be easy in the sense that you're not going to extend them for like $100 million. The price is going to be really, really high, as it should be. I don't know how the Blue Jays view this. This will be a question for Ross Atkins and for Mark Shapiro in the next week or so. Mm-hmm. Although I expect them to dodge it when it comes up. But yeah, I think that there's a strong case that people make it to me within the industry that like, just extend the guy, just pay him. But the price tag might be over $300 million. So it's not going to be a small price.
Yeah, especially over $300 million. He's such a tough one to do, because you look at what his actual production has been and the position he plays, and you say $300 million is nuts in a world where Matt Olson got 180, if you're using him as a comparable. And yet you kind of have him because of the face of the franchise piece of it, and the MVP caliber year, the flashes of complete brilliance, where he does get lumped in closer to the Juan Soto types, even though I think everybody is painfully aware that he's not Juan Soto and he's not Juan Soto caliber. And so yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes, but I kind of do think they gotta decide this offseason that you can't have this conversation looming yet again. You cannot be going into the deadline wondering this with Vlad Jr. And you certainly can't allow him to, walk for nothing if the return was no playoff wins, which I don't think they're getting, because I don't think that's where they're going to be next year. Benny, thanks as always for the time, buddy. Enjoy the rest of trade deadline day. And yes, I hope that you end up breaking some more trades for the Blue Jays that are a little bit more consequential than Kiermaier and Trevor Richards.
I hope so too, but I'm not anticipating. I think they've made their biggest moves, but hey, sign me up for some more blockbusters. I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Ben Nicholson-Smith at the Letters and MLB on Sportsnet.